Good evening. I'm Beth Fallon. Welcome again to the 51st State.
And I'm Leonard Harris. You know, after learning somebody's name, a question often asked is, what do you do? Well, in some countries that might be considered rude, but in America we've always been interested in what people do and their work. What you do generally separates you into a class. Statistically, a little more than 45% of our population is working. 60% of those of us who are working either have blue-collar or lower-paying white-collar jobs and are called the working class. It's also interesting to note that about 1 out of 4 working people is in a union, and that the working class unemployment rate is 13%. Tonight we put all of those facts together and look at people, some of the people who are affected, in a 3-part report about where some working people think they should be going in the future and where they are coming from to get there.
And we'll have a comment from political correspondent Robert Samanson. Then Leonard Harris and I will return to tell you some news about the future of this program, the 51st State.
Down and have a seat, somebody will call you.
Mail your card on Sunday, be sure to sign it.
Put in the box at the end of the counter, have a seat, and somebody will call you. Next.
I was working for Pan Am as a mechanic for 5 years. Now I'm a junior mechanic. Now I'm laid off. I've been laid off for 2 years. I'm having a hard time getting a job. So now I might be forced just to re-enlist back into the Navy in order to have a future, because now I'm going down the drain. I have to sell my car. I'm living with my mother. I have no money. I'm 28 years old. I have no future because this country's falling apart.
Next.
Where do you go when the creditors come banging on your door to repossess things? Who do you turn to when you can't afford health insurance? Where does people go? Where do people go? Not myself. Where does anybody go when they need help?
I mean, how are we supposed to live? I mean, beating, stealing, killing.
That's what it amounts to.
I mean, the whole deal comes down to beating, killing, and stealing.
And you don't want to hurt anybody.
And who, I mean, take me, for instance, right? I have my mother to live for, right? I don't have any children, but I have my mother to live for. But if when it comes down to the point, where am I going from here? I'm a big boy now. I'm not no more mama's little boy no more. Where I go from here? Where I go from here? I have to call my mother on the telephone and tell her to send me $100? Why? For a reason.
Where do you go from here?
Where do I go from here? Where do I go from here?
You're going to go down. That's the way.
Where do I go from here?
Where do I go?
I think the thing that hurts me the most now is that I have to get up every morning and I really have nowhere to go.
Nowhere to go. A lot of people feel that way these days, and a lot more are afraid they're going to feel that way soon. A few weeks ago, about 50,000 people decided they had somewhere to go, down to Washington, D.C., in Kennedy Stadium for a rally to demand jobs. They said to the government, look, give us public works, spend money on housing, take away tax loopholes from rich people, and break up the oil and food monopolies. As you're going to see in our film, this rally broke up soon after it started, but the working people's message came through loud and clear. No thanks to George Meany, the head of the AF-CIO. Meany says, I've never walked a picket line in my life. I'd rather see the workers stay home and let our big union lobbyists lean on Congress down here. It was the rank-and-file union members, though, that wanted this rally, especially from the New York Civil Service Union, District Council 37, and Local 1199 of the drug and hospital workers. But no rank-and-file people were invited to speak at this rally. It was taken over by the Industrial Union Department of the AF-L. And these days, working people have an awful lot to say. In our film, they say it. And into our film, we have woven some moments from a very moving document on labor history done for the Amalgamated Clothing Workers of America by Harold Mayer, narrated by Robert Ryan. It's called The Inheritance. And as the film's writer, Millard Lampell, put it, today is born out of yesterday, and there is no birth without pain.
We don't want giveaways. We want to work. Nothing more, nothing less.
We demand that the 8 million unemployed workers be given jobs, that the hours of labor be reduced from 8 to 6 with no reduction in pay.
They are ripping everybody off from that White House. High prices, a recession, no employment. We're getting sick and tired of it. We're going to start fighting.
Laying down track for the westbound train, stacking up timber in the state of Maine, digging out coal in the West Virginia hills, hammering steel in the Pittsburgh mills. Immigrants from Austria and Italy, immigrants from Riga on the Baltic Sea, green-eyed Slovaks, blue-eyed Swedes, Irishmen from Limerick, Englishmen from Leeds. Six-day week and a 12-hour day, and it's welcome, boys, to the USA. $1 a day for a factory hand, and it's welcome, ladies, to the promised land.
I'm doing things that I wouldn't have ordinarily done for the employer. My husband has been laid off. It's 2 weeks that he has been laid off. Now, he's in construction. I know that I have to work that much harder because my money was supplementing the income, and now this supplement money is the complete income. It makes him feel like he's not a man. It makes him feel very little when he's being supported by his wife.
What would happen to your family if you were laid off?
I'd hate to think about it. I own a house, But they think that when you own a house, you have it made. Well, you don't have it made. I just paid a $164 oil bill. That was more money than my husband even made in 1 week. I also had a $60 electric bill, and I'm thinking, here's $200 that I have to meet. It's not even food, it's not a mortgage, it's just heat and oil. And it's a very insecure feeling that I can get.
How would you feel if you had to go on relief?
Well, I've never had to go on relief. I think it would be very depressing because I've always worked all my life. I've tried to stretch the dollar. I think it takes away a certain amount of your dignity, and I don't want to lose this.
I want to work because I'm a working man. I've been working all my life. I'm 53 years of age. I've been working all my life. I can afford to stay out 8 months and have a family. And with $72 unemployment insurance, that ain't no money. That ain't no money for a single man. That's wrong, a man for a wife and 4 children and 2 grandchildren. I have to take care of them. And I'm not going to steal, that's for sure, because I've been working ever since I was 8 years old. And I've been here from North Carolina ever since I was 30. For 37 years I've been in the city, and I haven't been here stealing. I've been working since I've been here.
Unfortunately, though some other economic signs are improving, the employment picture remains bleak. I want most to help those who want to get back to work in productive jobs. This can best be done by temporary tax incentives to charge up our free enterprise system, not by government handouts and make-work programs that go on forever.
What I'm coming down to Washington for is to try to make the so-called politicians wake up and understand that the people are not going to take it no more. This is a peaceful demonstration. What happens next year? These millions of people decide it's no longer a peaceful demonstration. I'm going to tell you something. I never believed in hollering at my flag or my country. I never believed in it. I always thought it was a wrong thing to do. But now I know it's something that has to be done. You know, it's like a baby crying out. And, you know, a mother has 2 or 3 children, and one maybe never gets enough of food. That baby has to cry out. He loves his mother, but he has to cry out.
What made you change your mind?
Well, like I said before, my son sits home at night studying, working hard, reading warrant ads, telling me what am I going to do. This is what makes me, you know, when you hit home, then everything changes. Your whole perspective changes when you hit home. That's the key word, is when you hit home. Because as far as I'm concerned, I'm finished. It's his life now, you know. And this is what those people down in Washington should realize. They are responsible for every child in this country. And we should stop worrying about feeding other countries and taking other peoples from other countries and bringing them here. We don't need no more. I made a suggestion a long time ago that the Statue of Liberty put a blindfold on her eyes and lower her torch. Our gates are filled. Our children are being hurt because of these people coming into this country.
In the old country, I worked like an animal. And even before my children are born, the mark is on them. Animal. Before God, I swear my children will not live as I have lived.
Freedom doesn't come like a bird on the wing, doesn't come down like the summer rain. Freedom, freedom is a hard-won thing. You've got to work for it, fight for it, day and night for it. And every generation got to win it again. Pass it on to your children, mother. Pass it on to your children, brother. You got to work for it, fight for it, day and night for it. Pass it on to your children. Pass it on.
I don't want your millions, mister. I don't want your diamond ring. All I want is the right to live, mister. Give me back my job again. Now I don't want your Rolls Royce, mister. I don't want your pleasure yacht. All I my baby is to me my old job back. We work to build this country, mister, while you enjoyed a life of ease. You've stolen all that we built, mister. Now our children starve and freeze. So I don't want your millions, mister. I don't want your diamond ring. All I want is the right to live, mister. Give me back my job again.
Jobs we don't have. Our neighborhood is drained of all resources. We can barely live. We can barely pay our rent. And the little bit of substance that we're getting from the welfare, the little bit of compensation that we get from the working per week from the men that are laid off, the people in our neighborhood are so desperate, they are stealing from us. We are so desperate and poverty-stricken, we can barely leave our house with our crumbs there.
Now, what do you want?
We want jobs for every person in our neighborhood. We want our completely community center of the babies re-upheld, that these teachers can have their jobs, that the mothers can, when jobs are available, get their jobs. Wait a minute, we want steel workers. We want buildings going up. We want constructor workers. We want our men back at work so that our children can have something. We want to be able to produce. We are tired of asking for welfare. We are tired of begging. We want to work for hours that we can give the government back taxes rather than just receive taxes from the middle income people and from the rich people. We want to help them, but we want them to help us.
This land is your land. This land is my land. By the relief office, I saw my people, and some were stumbling, and some were wondering whether this land was made for you, and tell me that it is now.
Next.
Industry is looking for people 25 years old with 15 years experience.
Can you tell me something from your own experience, something that happened to you?
Well, with me, I lost my employment because the company I worked for went bankrupt. And they're still in business, but they cut everybody's wages.
But what about getting a new job?
In the industry that I'm in, there's not that many companies in the city. I would have to relocate. And I tried all of them, and everybody's looking for they wouldn't come out and say it. But inasmuch they're saying, you're too old. I'm only 42.
As far as his age is concerned, right? He's a bridge over troubled waters. So was I. They want kids like 19 years old so they can use and abuse.
And they do abuse them.
And that's what they do. That's the problem today.
Where do you go from here?
I have to go backwards. What I have to do now is go from supervision down to store manager. In 10 years, maybe, I won't be able to be a store manager by virtue of my age.
You can't do nothing in another 10 years.
You go down to receiving clerk. It's a steady backwards climb. You can't go forward anymore.
Golden America, half dream and half nightmare.
When I die, don't bury me at all. Hang me up on the spool room wall. Place a bobbin in my hand so I can keep on working in the promised land. I got the blues, I got the blues, I got the Winsboro cotton mill blues. I got the blues, I got the blues, I got the Winsboro cotton mill blues. Lordy, Lordy, schooling's hard. You know and I know, don't have to tell. You work for Tom Watson, gotta work like hell.
2 million children in the mills and the mines. 6 million grown-ups unemployed.
Why hire a man for $1 when you can hire a kid for a dime?
Hold the fort, for we are coming. Union men be strong. Side by side we'll battle onward. Victory will come.
As spokesman for the mine owners, I assure you the rights and interests of the laboring man will be protected and cared for not by the labor agitator, but by the Christian man to whom God in his infinite wisdom has given control of the property interests of this country.
My name is Arthur Thomas Cole from the United Auto Workers, and we're not all right. I heard you ask the question whether we're all right or not. No. What they did is laid off 400 to 500, maybe 600 people in that unit, and they're still producing the car, and they're violating the contract on us. We want those people back, because what they're trying to do is make us do the job of the people that are laid off by harassment, by belittling us, by berating us and badgering us, and we don't like it. And we want something done about it. And the people that are laid off are running out of money. Some of the tradesmen up there in Bergen County and back in New Jersey, they haven't worked for 60, 70 weeks. And unless somebody does something, you're going to probably see some bloodsheds right here in the street of Washington, D.C.
In Pittsburgh and Gary, Indiana, it was the 12-hour day. Take it or leave it. And you better take it if you know what's good for you.
Tell me, what is a vigilante man? What is a vigilante man? Does he carry a club and a gun in his hand? Would he beat your brother and sister down?
Amalgamated Clothing Workers of America to AFL. Enclosed, find our contribution, $100,000 for the relief of the steel strikers. We know that this is only the beginning of one of the greatest attacks ever directed against American labor.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
My daddy was a miner and I'm a miner's son, and I'll stick with the union till this old fight is won.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
There's no reason why every person in this country can't work. It's government. And I'm not against the government, but they're playing games. It's got to stop. You think the government's treating the people here right? Wrong. No, they're not. What's wrong? Come in. If the big unions would stop putting in for their big contracts, big benefits, overtime, all this other junk. If they would, some of these big unions would cut work and overtime, there's no reason why nobody could work. If they just would accept lower incomes, you know what I mean?
Memorial Day, 1937. 600 arrested, 60 sent to the hospital, 30 bleeding from gunshot wounds, including 1 woman and 3 children, 10 dead, shot in the back.
We have with us this afternoon a champion of social justice. I present Monsignor George Higgins for the invocation. O Lord, help us to look behind the cold statistics of unemployment and to see what they mean in terms of human suffering for millions of American families. Widespread unemployment seriously endangers the social order because it is apt to produce in its helpless victims feelings of discontent and bitterness towards a society which, in spite of its wealth, seems unable or unwilling to utilize their services.
The nation has a laundry list of unmet public needs. We need modern mass transit systems to free us from the monopoly of automobile transportation. You know the congestion problem in the cities, on the freeways, and in the suburbs.
rush hours in the cities are nightmares. We have the people, we have the needs. All we need is to get started.
Ladies and gentlemen, this gigantic rally was conceived in a spirit of sincerity and seriousness. Then we can't permit a few to run amok. And the marshals will please clear the field. This is not a playground for exhibitionists. It is with an enormous sense of gratitude and affection that I now call upon our friend Hubert Horatio Humphrey.
Thank you. Thank you very much. May I say that we have a great opportunity here to get a message over to the White House. Mr. President, are you listening? And I hope now that from this audience will go up the word, jobs now for Americans. We're going to help you get them. How are you? God bless you. God bless you. We want jobs. We want jobs. Good. 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 Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
The men should be allowed to talk and let them come off of their back and do something for the people, not a bunch of idiots out there in the middle of a field. Half of these kids wouldn't even be working, so they wouldn't, because they wouldn't hold a job down.
What do you do for a living?
What do I do? I'm a mender for 29 years, textile work. With it. I came down here to see a bunch of idiots out there in that field today.
I think it's great. I don't see nothing wrong with it. That'll let the congressmen and the senators know that the people means business. They got to get back to work.
We could put this country back to work and put it back to work by meaningful jobs, such as every state in the union needs sewage treatment plants, transmission lines, pumping stations, and this would build these communities for the next 50 to 75 years. We can give Russia 6% interest, loan Russia money on 6% interest. We can loan Egypt money at 3% interest, but we can't do it for our own people. And that's what our people are teed off about. They're sick and tired of that kind of guff.
What do you think the president's working for?
I wonder. He sure as hell isn't working for the people.
That's right. President Ford can ask for money to kill people, to send money to Vietnam. But he can't ask money for public works, and we need public works in this country. There's a lot of public works to go on this country. That money should go to provide jobs for our people, not to kill someone in Vietnam.
When you know his economists say that you need a certain level of unemployment to keep inflation down. Now, how do you feel about that, and how do your unemployed friends feel about that when they hear that unemployment is necessary?
Very simple. They feel that's very stupid on the president and his economists. That anyone have to be laid off to create a sound economy. Just plain stupid.
Now let a worker from the rank and file get up here and talk instead of some goddamn politician. Everybody listen! I'm going to college now, and I put my way through college, and I lost my job. And now I don't have any way to go to college, and I can't go. And now, because the government tells me that I can't collect unemployment anymore, and I'm still stuck where I am. I want a job!
Ladies and gentlemen, And brothers and sisters, this meeting is now concluded. Good luck. God bless you all.
Yes, sir?
Are you satisfied with what went on here today?
No, sir.
Why not?
Look at us. We're like a bunch of kids. Why didn't we listen to them? And they listened to us. What did we do? We come 30 hours. How many people come from all over? What did we do? Look at us. Jeez, look at us. We failed.
I think what happened is that it showed that the people that work, don't believe anymore in the people that are up in that podium. And that they're not going to sit here and listen to them spout off platitudes about we'll give you jobs, we'll give you welfare, we'll give you more unemployment, because they've been saying the same thing for years and nothing happens. And people have finally decided that it's time for us to start doing something about it.
Fed up with being unemployed, tired of being hungry. 20,000 doughboys went down to Washington to demand the veterans bonus we had coming to us. Herbert Hoover sicked the army on us, chased us out of the Capitol.
Let me tell you, mister, we ain't taking it no more. There's gonna be some changes made.
I belong to a local where they charge me $10 to come down here. Other people rode up here on the bus. We marched for what? Go in there to listen to a lot of whole shit, and you're not gonna get a damn thing from it. And that's where it stands now. And if the leadership don't come out, or if the people don't tell their leadership that we, the hell with this, we stop. We don't want no more of this bullshit. And the unions are selling out to our top leaderships here in Washington. And I belong to 371, and I'm a delegate. My name is Bob White. And that can be anywhere.
We want jobs. We want the products that used to be made in Syracuse that are gone overseas. We want them back.
I bought a GE tube last week, made in Japan. Why can't it be made here and give us jobs back here where we had them before?
Why do you think they do that? The businesses send them overseas for profit.
For profits and cheap labor.
Profit. Sure.
More profits and cheap labor.
Why did General Motors have car plants in the South for years? Because labor's cheaper, right? So they make more profit. Huh? So they turn the workers against each other, divide and rule, right? If I can't get you so good, I'll get the southern worker, and that'll make the northern worker work cheaper too. The same reason for the discrimination of black people and women. If you can make a woman work for less or a black person work for less, you can make a man work for less and a woman work for less. So they make about $150 billion more a year profit through discrimination of black people and discrimination of women.
This is a democracy country. We fight. We have lost our loved ones for this country, and we do want jobs. One way or the other, we'll get it.
You're not getting a job.
Yes,
you
we're
want
gonna
them.
get it.
Well, how? You come down here to a stadium, what do you get?
Excuse me.
But what progress did you make?
Excuse me.
If you can't get what you want by coming...
Excuse me. It took God 6 days and 6 nights to get this universe, right? It'll take us a little longer. We've came a long way, and we'll fight for what we want.
All right. Well, that's the way I want you to get it. That's the way I want you to get it.
There is a mysterious cycle in human events. To some generations, much is given. Of other generations, much is expected. This generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny. Destiny. Destiny.
First thing, I think workers can change the economic system.
Stanley Aronowitz, once a factory worker, now a college teacher, talking about the film we've just seen with other workers. Joe Maiello, once a cop, now a fireman, and a student at Staten Island Community College. Thelma James, a telephone information operator whose rank-and-file caucus is trying to prevent layoffs by joining a lawsuit against the phone company as a monopoly. Jerry Ruth, an office worker in New York City's Youth Services Agency. And Troyce Jackson, a Vietnam veteran and now a therapy aide at a state psychiatric center. What hit you about the film?
I heard like one lady in there, she was mad. One woman was crying that she didn't we didn't accomplish anything. She said we didn't accomplish anything. Look at them. She was confused. She still didn't know where to place the blame. And then other people said, no, nobody wants to hear that junk no more. You get tired of people telling you, making promises.
Definitely, I feel it has to be the system. I mean, I'm a firm believer in the democratic system, but I am not a believer any longer in the capitalist system. You know, coming from ultra-conservative, middle-income white family neighborhood background, etc., I think the point has to be brought out where you could see now the hard hat. They're getting very pissed off. They're out of work. They're not supporting their family.
But under the free enterprise system, there's also the promise that anybody in this country could possibly become rich. You know, that's the American dream.
I came to New York with $38 in my pocket, determined to make a living, right? So I landed a job with New York Telephone Company. And I thought it was the best thing ever happened to me. I thought it was God. And as I began to work there, I saw certain things happening, and I began to realize that things weren't going quite right. And so I started talking to some of the girls, you know. And what we saw was that we had a very weak union, and it was an independent thing. So we decided we'd try and organize.
You are in a group of people who were talking out all the time.
No.
The hard hat, middle income, was never talking out until his balloon broke.
Right,
now he finds out, Troyce, that, this is where it's at. I'm not there anymore. I can look down on the nigger and say, hey, boy, I'm better than you. It's not there anymore.
Yeah, because now, now the problem's in your door, Right? You can't say, well, my problem is, my job is being jeopardized because a black man's at it. Because right now, when I'm out there marching, you out there beside me because your job is gone too, brother. So now you know what's happening. So now we got to look for somewhere else for the blame, and that's what's happening now. Like, we're looking, to find out where the blame is.
I was really surprised. People are not blaming the corporations, the General Motors Corporation, for the fact that they're laid off. They're saying, well, we're laid off. What can we do? The only thing we know what to do, which is in the 1930s, people learned, we want unemployment insurance, Social Security, we want public works. Now, I mean, what could be done about these corporations? What do you think could be done? You work for a very large corporation.
We happen to know that there is at least $67 billion in assets. Mm-hmm. Now, why are we being forced to go on 4 days at 4 days pay? Why not 4 days at 5 days
Because
pay?
they got big stockholders.
Right.
And those big stockholders have got to be paid. Otherwise, they're not going to invest new money. And they're going to say to you, and I don't know how you're going to answer it, well, if we give you the money and don't give it to the stockholders, we're going to have to stop expanding. If we stop expanding, we're going to have to stop giving people jobs. So you've got to take a little beating for a short period of time so we can, in the long run, make everybody secure. Well, how do you feel about that?
In the film that I just saw, our foreparents and those people really fought hard to get where we were at before this economic crisis. And something happened, we must have become laxed or we must have lost sight on what we were doing. And through this, we've lost out a lot of what they really worked hard to gain for us.
But a lot of people began to believe after a while that what was good for General Motors and AT&T was good for the country.
Right.
You thought when you first came into AT&T that the sun rose and set.
Right, I did. I really did.
Now you're saying those people can't be trusted.
No.
And we're just in the middle. I mean, it's crazy to me how the big man wants to maintain his profit, and ask the little man to take a cut in pay. And then if you do give you more pay, they raise the prices so they take it right back from you.
But what would you do about it?
What would I do about it? First of all, I think, look, the capitalist system has been in for a long time. To me, I say get rid of it. I mean, if you don't want to get rid of it, then be sensible. Instead of everybody trying to get more profit, like, you know, and wages going up, let's balance things off. Let him cut his profit for a change.
Well, the free enterprise system, I don't say get rid of it. I say you have to put a safety valve on it. Because I feel that with your, 90+ billion going towards defense, you funnel this money into New York, into urban renewal. You go into an area, you go into South Bronx, you go into Brownsville. I mean, these areas look like somebody dropped a big goddamn bomb on them. These areas, there's nothing there. You take these areas and you turn around and you start building up these areas. If you build up these areas...
Well, that sounds fine, but why don't they do it?
Well, if I knew why, I would have 12 PhDs
Does anybody
in the rear of my name.
But we have to have the will. It's not going to be the Democrats or the Republicans who are going to address themselves to that kind of question. We have to have the will. Now, if we're not ready to take over the corporations, one thing we could do is take over lion's share of their profits, appropriate them for public uses. That is what is called a heavy corporate tax. Now, of course, everybody's afraid of corporate taxes because what they're afraid of is that if the corporations are taxed heavily, they're going to go out on strike. So they'll go over to Italy, and they'll go over to Korea, and they'll go over to Taiwan, and they'll go over to Latin America. Well, at the point at which they go out on strike, the people of the United States could do what Harry Truman did in 1946 to the railroads, take over the corporations.
Yet a lot of people who are unemployed and a lot of people who were threatened in the film blame the unions.
Seems to me that the problem that we face is that we have unions that are not rank and file controlled. I think the Industrial Union Department sabotaged that rally. I think in this case, the District Council 37 and the hospital workers were very active and very much behind it. But I was shocked that they gave it away to the Industrial Union Department in Washington. The speeches were mealy-mouthed, were weak. There was no mobilization of a real mass march.
When the unions were first put into play, it was there for the people. The union was started by the workers because the people were being exploited, right? Now the unions are owned and controlled by the big business. The unions aren't for the people anymore.
What's happening is that working people are beginning to say, as they said in the film, they sold us down the river, we've got to take control of our own destiny.
If this is happening, then do you think this will produce any real economic changes in this country?
No.
In the system?
No, I don't think that changing union leadership in any locals, I don't care if they're the most conservative or if others that you would call militant or whatever you want to call them, is going to change anything economically.
Seems to me, however, that if there was a different type of workers' organization, there were different kind of unionism, which said, yes, look, we're not just here on wages, hours, and benefits, but we're here to change society, you got a chance. Now, what Thelma did, I think, is fantastic because that was a group of workers who said, listen, they're going to lay us off, we're going to take them on. What you begin to raise is the whole question of who should control the society. And if the rank and file begins to have a generalized belief that it's their business to take over business or to limit the power of business, that's when you get social and economic change.
Suppose the recession ended tomorrow and everybody in this country got a job. Would everything be all right in the lives of the workers?
You got to get more than a job. You got to change. You got to look out for the future. You got to fix it so that this doesn't happen again. Why should I be comfortable? Okay, tomorrow everybody got a job. Everybody's happy. What's going to happen 10 years from now?
There's a real issue about the quality of work in this society. Many people work in jobs, people like Joe, that are patently dangerous. There are people who work every day in the most obnoxious and very often polluting conditions that give them asthma, that gives them heart disease, that give them cancer. These kinds of conditions are not going to be changed by simply getting a job.
These are the things I have to change.
So then a job really
A job is not really everything. It's dignity and self-respect and security and decent living conditions once you get off the job, a peace of mind, being a woman, not a child. All that goes with a job. A right to live, not to exist.
Pierre Renfrey makes his living by advising people who have money on economic and financial matters. He was President Nixon's top economic spokesman in the '72 campaign. And Presidents Kennedy and Johnson used his analyses too. Now he's president of Renfrey Boston Associates Incorporated here in New York, with clients in business, industry, and finance. Now, when workers in the film are asked why they think it's necessary to have unemployment, a certain level of unemployment, in order to cut down on inflation, they're outraged by the whole concept.
Oh, I would agree. I think that if I were the unemployed and I was told that I should be the sacrificial lamb for the economic system, I'd be outraged too. But we have one major problem in economics. No country, no economist, no politician knows how to run a full employment economy, jobs for everybody, without wild inflation.
You would condemn union leadership that advises its membership to sign labor contracts at a rate behind the rate of inflation.
Yes, sir.
Well, that would seem to contribute to more runaway inflation.
No. The whole concept of the establishment of a free enterprise system, which started in 1776, came out of one simple philosophy. Each person, and this is in the famous book by Adam Smith, each person in pursuing his own interest pursues the interest of the common good. Now, you may say, wait a minute, that sounds wacky because that's the rule of the jungle. I make one point. For 200 years, the American economic system, with all of its troubles and all of its blemishes and all of the terrible things that have happened in 200 years, nevertheless, has had the highest standard of living of any country, and today still is at the peak in the standard of living per capita of any country in the world. Free enterprise has not been too bad to us.
But when people feel harassed on the job in a recession or not in a recession, they don't sit back and compare themselves with people in Singapore.
Yes, I realize
They think about what it ought to be here.
I guess I am what you would call a capitalist. Let me say that I feel harassed on my job, too. I run my own business. I've got approximately 40 people that work for me. The government pounds me, the state pounds me, the city pounds me, my clients pound me, my employees pound me. I'm harassed, too.
How would you suggest that if the private sector is to carry the freight in this country, that capital be formed and industry be expanded so that there can be jobs?
We have ignored what the private sector has contributed. And again, I want to repeat, I'm not talking capitalism, because to me the private sector is just as much the man on the street corner who's got a candy store, and I'm serious. It's the individual proprietor. Let me give you an example. The one man who owns a candy store is paying the exact same tax rate as a large corporation. The government has taken away all his tax benefits. Now, you say, we want taxes cut, raised on the corporations, cut on individuals, but no one ever thinks about that guy. How important is he? Approximately 90% of all the private sector is in individual proprietors. We are living the highest on the hog in the world. We are forming the least capital and the least new plant and equipment. You come down to one thing. Production creates wealth, and wealth goes to the people that produce it. The high standard of living came out of production. It came out of wealth. And more, we are hitting the producers and holding back, and they're running and hiding because they're getting hit too hard. We need merely to understand the function of the private sector and give it some relief. And let's give them reasons to do things and hope they'll react and create full employment.
When you talk about giving corporations incentive to expand their industry and so forth.
Yeah, but let me remind you, I'm also talking about individual proprietors.
All right.
Okay, the small people, too.
All right, but
okay.
When we talk about the giants.
Let's say business.
Right, business, and especially about giant corporations. In theory, that would be a wonderful thing, but these are the same corporations, and we're talking now from the perspective of workers who have no particular power.
Yes, of course.
And they read that these corporations don't operate by theory, but operate practically by fostering the undermining of a regime in a South American country, by paying off politicians in Korea, by paying off federal government politicians and office holders so that they can make more profit on milk. A worker has a right to be skeptical about appeals to business to do the right thing for the country.
Let me answer you in a very simple way. There are no saints in an economic world. There are sinners, there are fools, and there are knaves. They exist as much in organized labor as they do in organized management. The worker on a production line who lifts a little thing and puts it in his pocket, or who won't work, is ripping off as much as anybody else. It is unfair, in my judgment, to talk about the rip-off of corporate industry without talking about the rip-off of labor, the rip-off of the farmers, the rip-offs of the politicians. If you say to me, do we sin as an economic system? Oh, yes. Every sector in this country is guilty of rip-off techniques.
Do you have a remedy?
Yes. Of course I do. You've got to have accountability.
Accountability for the actions of business, government, and labor are a main concern of a man who listened to Dr. Renfrey with us. He's Professor Stanley Aronowitz, the former factory worker you met earlier, who's now teaching at Staten Island Community College.
Well, the first thing that's clear about Dr. Renfrey's point of view is that he regards this as the best of all possible worlds. It reminds me of Leonard Bernstein's Candide in its seeking after perfection. He regards the small candy store or grocery store owner as of equal status as that of the large corporations. Well, everyone knows that in the last 75 or 80 years in this country, the large corporations have dominated the economy. The Fortune 500 large industrial corporations, the banks, the large insurance companies, the large utilities really have a lock on the social, political, and I would also say the economic lifeblood of our country. Dr. Renfrey takes virtually no account of that fact.
You said that Dr. Renfrey described his own best of all possible worlds, but you have your own best of all possible worlds too, in which the public, for the social good, takes over the means of production, etc. What makes you so sure that it's going to run right?
I'm not sure. I am not sure at all. One thing I do know is that it's running wrong. One thing we can say with certainty right now, that the pursuit of the self-interest of the banks and the insurance companies, the large production corporations, has withdrawn jobs from this country, has produced the worst runaway inflation since the end of the Second World War, has produced the largest rate of unemployment by Dr. Renfrey's own estimate since 1937. And I think the American people and the people of our city should be thinking about serious alternatives. Not the kind of system that exists in the so-called socialist countries necessarily, but a system in which there is real social control, a system in which we produce not by sharing the wealth in a simple-minded way, but produce for our social needs and begin to do away with profitability in people's ordinary desires.
Do you see any signs that make you hopeful that there's some changes in the direction you think is right?
Well, I think a large number of working people and others who are not working people are beginning to think seriously about socialism. I don't think that we have to take our examples or our inspiration from Russia or China. I certainly don't. We don't have to take our inspirations even from the mistakes of the past within our own country. But we do know that the so-called private ownership does not mean what Adam Smith meant, which was a series of small investors, small producers pursuing their own self-interest. Private ownership means large monopolistic control of American resources. The food that we eat is now being produced not by small farmers, but by large corporations. And it seems to me that until we come to grips with the fact that they are not pursuing our general interest, but that we have to pursue our own, we're going to have a worse economic situation. We're going to have a deterioration of public facilities. We're going to have really what John Kenneth Galbraith has called private affluence and public squalor.
Henry Luce said there was no working class, only a great middle class, and a small lower class doing its damnedest to become part of the middle class. If none of this fits Marx's dogma, it's probably because Karl Marx never met George Meany or had a chance to visit Queens. If Marx had, he would have known that the American worker, far from being on the cutting edge of social change, is far more likely to be the one to blunt it. It is no accident that when hippies marched against Vietnam, hard hats came out to beat them, or that George Meany feels far more comfortable with Nelson Rockefeller than he ever did with George McGovern, or that Walter Reuther, that pillar of American liberalism, took money from the CIA. Given the chance, the oppressed will always imitate their oppressors. Hard times are supposed to embitter workers. What the recession did, and what this recession seems to be doing, is make labor a part of a system as never before. It is easy to be down on labor, to see the working man as not the person who is going to save America, but drive it to the poorhouse. And in New York, that seems to have happened already. Rhetoric aside, it is the unions more than the banks which have put the city in its current financial mess. It is not so easy to understand why this has happened and what, if anything, can or should be done about it. The sociologists will come forward with a lot of explanations about capitalism, but that does not explain socialist England, where, thanks to labor, London is, if that is possible, even in worse shape than New York. There are those who would romanticize labor, who would paint the world in blue-collar chic while they wait on truck drivers for the latest pearls of Socratic wisdom. It is interesting, but hardly surprising, that those who find the blue-collar trade so fascinating are those who don't have to do them. Somewhere between the CIO bulls of Bal Harbor and the ascetic grape pickers of Delano is the real labor, that fictional working man who is trotted out every election time to be praised, fawned over, courted, and when the election is over, just as quickly forgotten. Who he really is, what he really wants, is something of a mystery. But a guess is that an explanation for the working man and why he does the things that he does has less to do with Marx and more to do with Freud and human nature. Altruism has never been a strong suit among human beings. Self-interest is. Organized labor is no better or worse, only bigger. That is the fact, and that is the pity.
This is the last edition of the 51st State for this season, but this is not the last of the 51st State.
Beginning on Thursday nights at 8 o'clock in July, Leonard Harris and I will alternate throughout the summer to bring you the best of the 51st State. We have a lineup of nearly 40 of the series' best and most memorable films. Investigative reports, human interest stories, films on the arts, theater, how we eat, views of love and hate, profiles, interviews, politics, and of course, a film about the place you have always promised yourself and your loved ones you'd visit at some crack of dawn, the Fulton Fish Market.
Oh, really?
Really. And as the song goes, in the meantime, in between time, you should have fun. And of course, do something that's good for you.
Or avoid that which may not be good for you. This is the end of a season. It's the first in 13 years in which I was not a workaday critic. The first in that time I haven't had to go to plays and movies and other cultural events.
But
once in a while I went anyway. Here are 4 observations. The new Lehman Wing at the Metropolitan Museum. The main space is splendid, and I suggest you go there when the afternoon sunlight is streaming in. The rooms, those replicas of the Lehman townhouse, are another story, hanging places for ego rather than paintings. But does the Met have to keep those rooms intact? My understanding is it is required to do so for 35 years. Will the Met tear them down someday in the future and open up that space? Don't ask me. 2, Grand Central Terminal. Go and savor it. The building lost its landmark designation, which puts it in danger of being buried under another Pan Am-style tower. At the rally to save it, who should appear but Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis? Now, I have watched her throw away the prestige she could have done some good with, the way Eleanor Roosevelt did, the way Lady Bird Johnson does. Now, Jackie has also joined the board of the Municipal Arts Society to use some of her celebrity where it can help. Is it too late for Grand Central? For Jackie? Don't ask me. 3, just as the season was coming to an end, we finally got a Sacco musical, chorus line at Joe Papp's Public Theater. It proves that subsidized theater can and must help commercial theater. You know, Papp is also taking over a Schubert house, the Booth, for the season ahead. Will nothing stop that man? Last and least, Shampoo, a pitiful movie about sad, frantic people, Hollywood swingers. You know, friends told me I had to see it because that's what Hollywood is really like. So what? Suppose someone made a movie about manure and defended it because that's what manure is really like. A film, like any other art form, should do more than just show the manure. That I can see at a stable and save myself $3.
Now, with the money that you save, in the meantime, there's Channel 13's Marathon Auction, beginning next Friday, June 6th, and for 9 nights thereafter, the nighttime schedule will be filled with the sound of falling gavels, and money, we hope. Both Leonard and I will be doing stints on auction week, and we hope you can be with us. I think my night is Friday the 13th.
Well, aren't you lucky? I'm stuck with Monday, June 9th.
Until then, and until the best of the 51st state begins, Thursday nights at 8 p.m., beginning in July, there's nothing more for me to say. But on behalf of the staff of the 51st state, I'm Beth Fallon.
And I'm Leonard Harris. Thank you for watching tonight and throughout the season.